As a watercolour artist, working with gouache for me was a really different experience and outside my comfort zone, so let's just take a look and see how I got on. Okay, so first of all, what is gouache? Well, it's an opaque watercolour medium, and unlike acrylic paint, it can be reactivated when wet. I bought this set of 5 artist quality gouache paints from Holbein, and I have some primary colours here, the 3 primary colours and a black and a white paint, and I'm going to be mixing them in this empty palette that I've got here. And I'm going to begin by mixing out just some black gouache on its own, and this is going to form the background of the snowdrop painting that we're going to be doing. For this I'm using this number 8 size flat brush, this one's from Zen Art supplies, and all the materials I'm going to be using in this tutorial I will link in the description box underneath this video. I'm using my Etcher sketchbook here. This has a 300 GSM cold pressed paper, and as you can see, just created a frame here by using some washi tape. This is to form a really neat edge where we're going to be applying the black gouache paint. Now this is really outside my comfort zone as a watercolourist, so let's just see how I got on. So first of all, I've just got a really nice mixture here of black gouache, and you can see I've just added a tiny bit of water to activate it to make it really movable. I want this background to be really sort of even and have a nice solid colour, because we're going to be painting snowdrops on top of this. So I'm just mixing it up and applying it, as you can see here, with this flat synthetic brush. As I said, this one's from Zen Art, but use any brush that you feel comfortable with. We want this to have a nice sharp outside edge, which is why we've put the washi tape on to create this lovely frame. And I continue this all over the paper like this, and you can see that I actually did go slightly outside the washi tape, but hey, it doesn't matter. So when the gouache paint dries, it actually dries to a matte finish like this. Okay, so make sure that it's completely dry before you attempt the next level. So I've printed out the snowdrops here, and I will supply you with the photograph if you want to trace it down, along with a reference photograph that we're going to be working from, and I'll tell you a little bit later on how you can attain access to those. Very carefully, after scribbling on the back, I just trace down the outline like this. You just want the outline to be that, just a really simple drawing. I hope you can see that on the camera. Once that's in place, I'm just applying a little bit of white here. I'm using I think this is a number 3 size spotter brush, but any brush will do that you feel comfortable with that has a reasonable point. So this is going to form the base level of our snowdrops, and as you can see, I've left the photograph in the top left hand side just for reference. I'm used to working from light to dark and building up my layers sort of slowly and carefully. So the concept of working with colours that were opaque and that I'm able to build on top of each other just felt really strange for me. And it took me a little while to get used to the handling of this medium, because it is actually very easy to use. But for now, let me talk you through the process that I did just working through. So I'm just using my number 2 spotter. If you're not familiar with spotter brushes, they are similar to round brushes, but they have a kind of shorter, more stubbier bristle, which means that you can apply the paint with sort of better control. So that first layer of gouache is dry, and you can see that I've mixed quite a lot of water with it to give it a little bit of transparency. I kind of did this on purpose because I wanted the snowdrops to have a sort of translucent feel to them. Of course, I could have done it the other way around. I could have added a grey mix to that area, but instead, because I'm used to working with watercolour, I thought it looked quite nice this way. So just adding a layer of gouache paint. This is pretty much straight from the tube, but I've just added a tiny bit of water, and you can see me here just painting in a little bit of detail. This is just white gouache on its own, and as I said, these ones are from Holbein. I bought these from Jackson's, and they were just a pack of 5 paints here, and I thought, given that I'm new to gouache, I didn't want to splash out on buying too many colours, so the primaries and the black and the white seemed like the sensible thing to do. So now that I've applied the sort of base tones of the white part of the flower, we can start to think about the green tones that we have here. So the yellow and blue and red here. So I've mixed the yellow and red together to create this kind of orangey tone to just paint in the stamen and anther like this. And now I'm mixing some green, so I'm just using different ratios of the green and the blue and the yellow with a little bit of water, and just to get the right tone that I want. And this is just the just one tone of the green colour, and you can see me just adding a tiny bit of the yellow there. I'm just painting that in to form the base colour of the gouache. Adding a little bit of yellow here and there just to brighten up the stem. This is my number 2 size spotter. As I said, this has a really nice tip. It gives me, it means I can control the paint better. Using this yellowy green mix, I apply it to this element of the plant like this. Using a light touch, being careful not to move the black gouache that's underneath. I was actually very surprised as to how this worked. I was expecting the black paint to be lifting off all the time, but actually it didn't. Carry on working down like this, mixing up these two colours together with just a tiny puddle of water. If you're familiar with my paintings, my watercolour paintings, you'll see me do this quite a lot. I have a small puddle of water on my palette. It just means that I'm not flooding the brush with water, and I'm able to control the paint like this. I've added a little bit of blue and a little bit of white to that green mix because I felt that this element of the stem had a tiny bit of blue. Just carrying on the process like this. Paying attention to my reference photograph. And speaking of reference photographs and line drawings, we have a couple of ways that you can access these. You can join our Facebook group where we post all of the reference photographs and line drawings every week. You can also post your finished paintings from our tutorials there and have some feedback from both myself and our other wonderful members. We are in a fantastic community, so do consider joining us. I will put the link to the Facebook group in the description box underneath this video, but I will also put the reference photo and the line drawing for this tutorial right at the end of this video, so be sure to stay right until the end where you can screenshot the both of them and print them out and have them that way. So you can see me just add in some green to the petals like this. And if you are interested in learning how to paint snowdrops with watercolour, we have a full-length tutorial that you can see on the screen. I will link it on the top left-hand screen now, and you can take a look a little bit later on after this video. So if that's something that interests you, then do take a look. Okay, so just carrying on the process here, just adding a little bit of the yellowy tone. I'm not being too fussy with my colours here. I'm just adding the lighter values where I think they are needed. And you can see here, I'm just applying some to the sort of base of that little bud there. We want it to have some tonal variation and we don't want our painting to look flat. And once more, I'm adding some of the yellowy green tones. So I have quite a lot of yellow here, a little bit of white and a tiny bit of green, just to brighten up some of the areas that I felt needed a little bit of a lift. So it's just a little bit of white to brighten up these buds. If you are enjoying this video, do consider giving it a thumbs up. If you are new here, we launch brand new watercolour painting tutorials every Tuesday. So if that's something that interests you, then you may want to consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification. We're also over on Instagram at The Wonders of Watercolour, so do take a look at us there. I just want to take a moment to tell you about our Patreon, which at the time of filming has 4 different membership levels, from mini weekly videos of doodles, vlogs and podcasts to full-length botanical painting tutorials, which are exclusive to Patreon and are of course ad-free. If this is something that interests you, I've put a link in the description below, plus it's a way for you to support my channel. So just continuing with mixing these greens, if I want to darken the value, I'm just adding a tiny bit more blue, as you can see here. That just gives it a nice sort of darker blue tone, and I've just turned my painting around just to sharpen up the edge of the stem. We're going to let that dry completely before we build up our layers. Again, this is the watercolorist in me. This is a number 0 sized round brush that I bought from Jackson's, and I have some black gouache paint on my palette sort of drying out there. So I'm just going to activate that and add it to the green mix that I have already. Noticing that I'm dipping my brush in that tiny puddle of water. This will help me manipulate the paint on the paper to get it sort of moving around again, and just adding a little bit of that darker green where the base of the flower hits the adjoining green element that you can see here, and I wanted that to sort of really stand out a little bit. So I'm using my this is a number 0 brush, as I said. It's from, bought it from Jackson's. It's a Tintoretti brush, synthetic fibre, and has a really, really fine point. So this will help me gain complete control of my painting. I'm just adding a few of the darker values to the little green elements on the snowdrop flower heads, like this. I think it took me a little while to get used to the handling of this medium, and I think if I do another painting using gouache, I think I have a better idea now of how it handles. It's really difficult to get into that mindset of knowing that you can build up a lighter value on top of a darker one. But now that I've used it, it's something I really enjoyed using. So I've been experimenting a little bit later with different mediums, including Inktense pencils, which are kind of like an ink-based pencil that you activate with water. I absolutely loved working with them because of their vibrancy and their translucency, and if that interests you, then I'll link it on the top of your screen right now for you to have a look at. So notice how I'm using the tip of this brush to really get a sharp outline on some of the elements of the flower and the buds. I was able to do this by loading my brush with gouache paint, adding a bit of water to it, and just using it like this to form some shapes. Even with gouache, you could still get the fine lines that are needed of a botanical painting, and I was really, really happy with this. So just adding some white to lighten the value. As watercolorists, we're used to just adding water to lighten up our paint, but of course, this is far, far easier, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. Just adding white paint to brighten the value of a colour is such an alien concept to me, but now I've tried it, it's something I'm definitely going to continue to practice. So I'm adding some of the darker value to the inside edges there, as you can see, and once again sharpening up that area where the flower meets the green element, like this. I'm just using a little bit of water on my brush here to merge those colours together, and just adding a tiny bit more of that black gouache to enhance some of the outside edges that I felt were a little untidy, and of course some more detail to the bud. I really do think at this point that I needed to use a lot less water with the paint and sort of getting out of that mindset of having a lighter value made with water. For maybe the different values, I perhaps would have been better off by mixing white with black and having that grey tone and paint on that way. But nevertheless, I'm quite happy with the kind of translucent look that these little flower heads have. I quite like that look. I'm just using that white gouache to outline the petals here, as you can see, using the tip of that number 0 brush. As I said earlier, all the materials that I'll use today I will link in the description box underneath this video, so if you'd like to take a look, then do. And you can find all the information you'll need there. So just looking at the reference photograph, sort of just looking at it as a loose kind of guide as to where I'm going, and just carrying on, adding a tiny bit of water here and there to just kind of merge those colours together lightly. And I felt that this element needed brightening up a little bit, so I'm adding a little bit more white paint here and sharpening up some of the edges. So we're almost finished with this painting. All that needs to be done is remove the washi tape, which I'll do in a moment. But remember to stay right until the end, because I will give you the line drawing and the reference photograph for you to screenshot. So now I'm just taking off the washi tape. As you can see, I did go outside the pencil line a little bit on the right hand side, but I'm not too worried about that. So all in all, I think it's a success. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you for watching. Stay until the end for those screenshots, and I'll see you next time.